Robbie. I have done that. We'll call this special meeting to order. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wendat peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Any declarations of conflicts of interest from members of council this evening? And all members of council are present. I need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the published agenda for Monday, May 13th. Councillor Hammond, Councillor Allard, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And we'll move to reports from administration. Director Drusevich of Corporate Services, and this is regarding our municipal waste collection services.
Perfect. Thank you through the chair. I'm going to have the clerk's office pull up the slideshow for us. Bear with us 1 second. So we typically wouldn't do a slideshow or presentation for the awarding of an RFP. However, this is one of our main contracted services. So what we've done is a brief slideshow giving you all the context surrounding this RFP. So just to the left of the zoom in, zoom out on the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see like keep going over that one. Yes. There we go. Okay, next slide, please. So in 2022, a new contract was awarded to GFL Environmental. It had an expiry date of May 1st, 2024, with no option to renew. The reason why a 2-year contract was done was because the political environment at the time was heavily debating a regional approach to garbage, whereby it would all be under the umbrella of the county. However, the regionalization ended up failing. And so in light of that, we developed an internal request for proposal, which was then posted externally on February 16th, and it closed April 3rd, 2024, giving us a 1-month period to evaluate submissions. Next slide, please. So we did this RFP a bit differently than what the past RFPs were, and that was because in 2025, the town will be mandatorily included in the new organics program. This is a weekly organic pickup, and this is through the administration of Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority, and it will ultimately change the landscape of waste collection because residents will have an additional collection weekly that they did not have before. So in the RFP, we asked the proponents to submit 2 bids, one being the option of a weekly collection and one being the option of a bi-weekly collection or once every 2 weeks. And we did this knowing that in 2025, we are going to have a new weekly collection coming. And so within that, the weekly collection of organics is intended to pick up the smelly garbage or items that would be composted more easily through a processing facility. So they do have a whole list of items. It would be things like small meat bones, anything that is composted would be through that organics program. So at that time, there will be an additional cost. I get to that later on in the presentation, but ultimately we'll need to find some sort of cost savings for our residents with this new levy that will be implemented onto them. And so that was why we chose to explore bi-weekly to try and find some sort of cost savings eventually. Next slide, please. So this proposal was posted in accordance with all provincial standards of open procurement. It was not an invitational procurement process. However, we still went out and solicited bids from vendors anywhere from London to Windsor just to try and solicit some competition. We know from all of our neighboring municipalities that most are only receiving 1 bid from the same contractor. That has been common throughout the last 10 years for this service. So it was also in line with CFTA free trade agreements and the town's procurement bylaw. So only one request for proposal was received, and we used our scorecard approach for request for proposal process. We also did an additional step where we met with the sole bidder and attempted to negotiate with them. Being that we only had 1 bid, we had the ability to do this. And so what they came back with was if you go with a longer term, they could look at some cost savings. And so what I have presented to you tonight in a few slides are the submission one that they presented to us and then the revised submission after administration met with them to negotiate. Next slide, please. So just like I said, what the RFP asked for was a 5-year term. And the second submission that we negotiated with the contractor was an 8-year term. Longer term contracts have proven very beneficial in the county because when you get to year 6 to 8, and I explain this again in later slides, you tend to reap very good cost savings as the contractor hasn't been able to go into the contract and open it up again, right? So when you look at contracts that have gone through COVID and the high inflation, and anyone that entered into it before that, they're really reaping some really good cost savings right now. And the vendors essentially incurring a loss for those multiple years. So submission 1 for the 5-year, this was, again, what was initially submitted for weekly was $1.4 million. If we did biweekly, it was around $1 million. And that $1 million of biweekly is currently what we were paying for weekly pickup. I just want to give you some context as to how much the contract has gone up. If we did biweekly over the 5-year term, instead of weekly, you'd see a savings of approximately $400,000. So for submission 2, they offered, you can see the difference column, approximately $75,000 of savings a year if we went with the 8-year contract. And for biweekly, approximate savings of $50,000 per year. And then you can see that under submission 2, the 8-year term, if you went from weekly to biweekly, it'd be in and around the $400,000 savings mark as well. Next slide, please. So given that we've now asked for 2 different levels of service, we released a very brief townwide questionnaire asking residents the following. We strategically kept it brief, knowing that our options are fairly limited at this point, given that we're dealing with 1 vendor. Garbage collection services, this was the question that was posed to residents. We currently provide, through a subcontractor, a weekly waste collection pickup. So as a resident, based on your service expectations, please choose from the following. Option A being weekly pickup. I am willing to pay a slight increase if necessary to maintain a weekly waste collection pickup schedule. Or option B, switching to bi-weekly pickup once every 2 weeks, being I am willing to move to a bi-weekly waste collection pickup if necessary to avoid an increase in taxes. Next slide. So the results were very split. At the end of it, 52% said that they'd like to maintain current levels of service, and 48% chose the bi-weekly option. Some comments that we observed as well were that they'd be interested in bi-weekly in the winter months, but continuing in the summer months with weekly, given that that's when the smelly garbage with the heat starts to smell the worst, right? So what we also learned from this is that residents really require some education on the new organics program, right? They don't realize that in 2025, they will have this mandatory program coming to them that weekly picks up the smelly garbage. So we do plan to do further consultation once we get more details from USWA on the rollout of it and the timelines and how it impacts residents. Next slide, please. So where we are tonight, after a lot of meeting and a lot of evaluation, administration is recommending that the town and residents and council remain with weekly collection at least until December 31st of 2024. And really the second bullet points out that we really shouldn't be switching until organics officially kicks off. And the reason for this is we don't want any drastic service level changes right now. We need to get more information from the public on what they expect, but we also need to make sure that we're really considering the impact of organics and what that means to our residents and making an educated decision at that point. Also, switching frequencies back and forth at this point within the RFP, we do need to give the vendor 6 months notice to do that. So it could prove difficult given that October 2025 is when organics rolls out. We want to keep collection throughout this summer at least. So if we went bi-weekly, you'd be looking at next summer without weekly collection. So it's not something that at this point we think should be done. We think it should be rolled out with organics in 2025. Next slide. We are also recommending the awarding of the 8-year contract term. I spoke about this briefly earlier on. This term provides an annual cost savings. So at the end of the day, this is a separate line on the tax bill. You'll see that in a couple of slides as well, but it allows this term that we've negotiated with the vendor allows the flexibility to switch as well. So and at the end of the day, if we're not happy with the service, we do have the right to terminate if the grounds prohibit such, or if they give us reason to terminate that contract. So what we've seen in the last 10 years all across Essex County is very high and drastic price increases for the collection of garbage. And so entering the 8-year contract would protect the ratepayer against these large increases that we've seen. It would allow for better budgeting for residents, council, as well as administration, given that we know what we would be locked into for the next 8 years. Typically, longer-term contracts can offer substantial savings. So that's what I was mentioning earlier, is that we know anyone right now that is locked into a contract that expires in 2027 is reaping significant cost savings compared to us for the next 2 years. And so we're hoping that within 6 to 8 of our contract term, we'd be able to also incur those cost savings. The other thing to note is that the length of this contract, it aligns with the contract that was awarded for organics. So organics went to market, an RFP was awarded to, it's now public, Miller Waste. So they enter into the contract beginning next year for an 8-year term. The expiry of our contract would align exactly with that contract. And so at that point, we know that there could potentially be other vendors in the market. And we know at that point that we might have an economies of scale, because you might see people enter the market with trucks that could pick up both. The landscape may have changed. So we know for the next 8 years, organics is not changing. And so that's why we're recommending the 8-year. Next slide. So just want to highlight this because we have heard from residents as well that they believe that this is the garbage is a part of the tax rate. And it is to a certain point, but it's separate on the tax bill, and it has its own separate rate. So it's its own separately identifiable levy, which means we remit the money through this line and simply pay the contractor. So it's a bit different than the average mill rate. And a few municipalities treat it this way. Some do have it buried in their mill rate though. Okay, next slide, please. So where we are from the financial impact is that we have a remaining budget of approximately $723,000. We prorate the 8-year term for the weekly collection. We have an unfunded amount of approximately $191,000. So in order to achieve a balanced budget and make sure that the garbage reserve does not go into a deficit, we would have to adjust the rate from 0.00104 to 0.00116. And this equates to approximately $32 of an increase for the entire year for the average household in Essex. Next slide, please. Yeah.
Thank you, through the chair. Can you, did you go back a slide? The remaining budget. No, she did. The 3226, is that the remaining or is that for the full year? Like, are we looking at a 3226 increase for the year or for what's remaining?
The increase for the full year over 2023. Through the chair. So this last slide is just to provide council with what we know at this point for organics. We'll definitely keep council informed as we learn more, but we do think it's important that we start educating our residents as well as council on what's to come. So they have delivered preliminary costing for organics, and what they estimate that to be is an additional $106 to $171 per year per household. That doesn't include the processing charges. So the processing will be done at a facility in Leamington, and that is just purely the cost of the trucks at this point, as well as any other services provided by USWA outside of processing. So if the town reduced the waste collection to bi-weekly at the same time as organics was introduced, then the net cost could be reduced to approximately $114 per house. So that includes processing, and it includes the savings of switching to bi-weekly. So instead of looking at $171 potentially for a household, it'd be more in the realm of $114 with that service change. What we have heard are motions being made at neighboring municipalities to have this charge fall under the county levy instead of the current model. What happens currently is USWA invoices each municipality for how many households they pick up. That was the proposed model, that they would continue to invoice each municipality and we would have it within our tax rate. But what other municipalities are doing, they're saying that if the service is equal across the county, it should be in the county tax rate. And so you're seeing motions come forward to speak towards that. So at this point, I'll open the floor to any questions.
Mr. Drusevich, I have Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I'd like to make a motion that whereas on March 16th, 2022, Essex County Council determined that all lower tier municipalities shall participate in regional organic waste collection and processing program. And whereas Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority is proposing the level of service be applied to urban and rural areas. And whereas it is estimated that this service will result in an increase of $114 per year per household for the town of Essex in the first year of the program. It is moved that Essex Council directs the, should I put the Deputy Mayor Shepley or Mayor Bondi to make a motion at County Council asking the County Council agree to fund the cost of regional organic waste collection and processing program through the County of Essex property tax levy. If changes are required to the bylaws and agreements to achieve this result, it is requested that the County of Essex amend these bylaws and agreements as required, such as with USWA, City of Windsor, and others. Thank you.
Shepley, seconded by Councillor Verbeek. So I believe in a nutshell, you want our organics on the county levy. Do you want to further explain your motion?
Well, I think that because it's an initiative that's been put forward by the province, and we were put into this by the previous county council, that it was something that should be on their tax levy, not on the town of Essex. It's something that they're proposing and we're being pushed into.
Councillor Verbeek has seconded. Any comments to the motion? I do have one question. Director Drew. So I know we're moving to organics, and that was already decided, but do you know if the town of Essex was legislated to have organics pickup?
The chair, through the provincial policy statement, they were not. Nor are they still at this point. It's because of a county resolution that we are required to.
CAO Speed, did you want to add anything? Okay. Councillor Verbeek?
Do we know, so the organics per household, the municipality is going to be billed per household that participates, or just from our roll book?
Through the chair, it won't be voluntary participation. So it will be levied upon every household that qualifies, regardless of whether they choose to participate or not.
Questions from council? We do have a motion on the table. Does everybody understand? Councillor McGuire Blaze. And then I don't know if anybody needs the motion read again, if that's an option. No.
Thank you through the chair. So my question is, the motion is saying that we have $114 going to county council. Am I correct? You want the 114, the 114 to be put on the county bill. But doesn't that 114 also include our garbage? I think I'm confused as to what the 114 is. Like, how can we say that we're not sure where our organics lies between 106 and 171, but if we do it this way, it's 114. Can you explain that maybe?
The chair, so the 114 is an estimate, most definitely at this point, and it's separate from two recommendations tonight, right? So it's separate from the garbage conversation right now. It's purely an estimate that at a minimum, it will be 114 at a minimum, given what USWA has provided to us, and if we switch to biweekly. So it could very well be a lot more. I believe what the resolution is speaking to is that regardless, we know we have a significant impact coming to ratepayers. And so that shouldn't be through the town mill rate, but instead through the county.
Further?
That. So the 114 is that is nothing about our garbage and our decision tonight. That 114 is your estimate, and the 114 doesn't change if we go to weekly or bi-weekly. That's just an estimate on what you think organics will be. Okay, thank you. That was not clear for me. Thank you.
Counselor Meady.
To you, Mary. Yes. To Katie again. So what will the residents' bill be for estimated? Be for organics and regular garbage pickup then?
The cost for organics, I just want to kind of maybe make a clarifying statement because I could see how it could be confusing. We were essentially talking about garbage and then we switched right over to the organics discussion pretty quick. So basically organics should be considered on its own at this point, right? So it should be separate from the garbage discussion tonight. And the cost for organics is estimated at $114 per household starting in 2025. I don't know, I don't have details as to if that would be prorated because it's beginning in October. I would assume that it would be. As far as our tax rate and the results tonight, so switching over again in topics, garbage only, let's just consider garbage. The average cost for a town of Essex resident, if we continued with weekly pickup, would be, just one quick second, I'm just pulling it up. Approximately $222 a year. That's weekly, and bi-weekly would be $214 a year.
I just want to clarify before we go to Counselor Meady. I believe the reason why the deputy mayor brought this up now is because other municipalities are doing such motions because the county really has the binding motion for our municipality to go into organics, even though the province isn't mandating us to go into organics. So the theory is if the county is pushing us to do organics, the levy should be on the county end because we're not even going to have much of a say in terms of the level of service and who gets pick up. So that I think that's the theory, and it's time sensitive. So that's why I think he's bringing it up tonight. Counselor Meady?
You, Madam Mayor. I don't know if it'd be better to go to the deputy mayor or to Director Grusevich. But my question would be that the reason why we were going to ask for county to make it a regional thing is we're anticipating like a cost of scale where the amount per household will actually be cheaper.
The reason we're asking the county to take care of it is it's county initiative. The cost of scale is already done, like their costs are going to be set because it's a county provided. So I think because the taxation, it's county provided system. So it should be, all of our questions, all of our problems are going to be directed there anyway. So the tax should be on their side, not on the towns. If that helps.
Mr. Drusevich wants something to add.
Through the chair, I'm just going to give a little bit of a breakdown because I know that we only discuss it really once a year and that's within budget, right? So the principle of what we pay to the county ultimately, right? So we collect the 40% from taxpayers for services that are performed by the county. And then we take those taxation monies that we collect from our residents, remit them back to the county. And it's for any service that is accessible to all county residents, right? That's the premise of that levy. So your ambulance services, things like that, right? Your social type of services. That is what paramedics, right? So anything like that is equal access across the county. The service is set at the county level. That's sort of the principle here. And I think what Deputy Mayor Shepley discussed with myself was that that's really all the same principles for the organics collection as well, right? So.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so 114 is the question I think everyone's trying to get to is the levy being switched to the county is still going to be 114. Is that where it's not going to change, even though it's a different mill rate than ours and but 114, we're paying it one way or the other, the resident, and that's likely what it's going to be even when it goes to the county.
I think as a mayor and deputy mayor, I mean, we're faced with whatever seat we sit on, we have to bear the brunt of that increase, but it kind of saves our council from having that increase. It makes the county absorb the increase instead because they are the ones, like, we could have a much cheaper organics program and it could be just rural Essex, Ward 1 and I mean, yeah, urban Essex and urban Harrow. We could have a really affordable organics program if we did a made in Essex program, but we're not given that option. So because we're not given that option, it should, in I think many of our opinion, it should be a county levy. Okay, everybody is clear with the motion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? We have one opposed, so that is carried. Let's go back to our garbage conversation. Questions now on our garbage conversation. At the end, we do need, we have a couple recommendations that council award the request for proposal. And I'll open up the floor though before that. Councilor McGuire-Blaze and Councilor Allard.
Thank you, through the chair. So, we're really looking at an $8 a year difference to go from weekly to biweekly. If we're weekly is $222 and biweekly is $214, $8 a year doesn't seem to be a heck of a big difference. Are we allowed, because I do see that we're probably going to need less garbage collection once the organics is picked up and people start getting used to the program. Does the contract with the current, sorry, I'm not sure who it is, with our current provider, does that allow for us to change it whenever we want? We just need 6 months. Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Allard. Okay, one thing I do want to make note of is because it failed at the regional level, there was not at any point were we given data and stats that there was going to be a proven cost savings at the regional level. There was going to be for sure a lack of local control, but not once. And I think that's why some of our municipalities, like, we're trying to ask for more information. We were never ever shown. We knew that there was pros and cons of staying local. One of the cons where we knew our tenders could come back higher, but not once were we ever shown that going regional. It was assumed it would save money, but we were never shown. Councilor Guerin?
If you only have one company bidding on it, then it doesn't really matter. Like, you don't really, like, if one company's bidding on it, you're not going to be able to foresee if there's ever going to be a savings to partner with another municipality even. You know, so now just to Director, when you said that we tendered it out, we had one back, but we also were proactive and approached others and asked if they would be willing to. We had a couple, 3 of them, and they all said no, is what I'm hearing.
Some didn't respond. Those that did, one of the concerns that were cited was that they couldn't get vehicles in place in time, and that there was a large capital outlay with the cost of purchasing vehicles. So I believe that that vendor would have been looking at trying to establish a fleet, right? So they probably weren't an established vendor either. And one of the scoring techniques that we use are they have to have experience in the garbage collection.
More questions for that, through the chair. So right now we're paying on that 2-year contract, you said roughly about $1 million a year, correct? And that was a 2-year. Do you recall what we were paying previous to that and how long that contract was?
Pull that, I'll just need a minute or two. Would have been the 2015 contract you're referring to.
While we're waiting. Councilor McGuire-Blaze?
And you know what, maybe Deputy Mayor Shepley can answer the question. I heard that USWA is changing their provider to something called Circle. Is this correct?
Cycle program, not, yeah. Yeah, but that's just for recycling.
Thank you for answering. And further, when does that change over? Because what I'm hearing is, so there's going to be a new company in the area that has the trucks that have the capacity to do garbage collection, and possibly they would want to, maybe not this year, but maybe 3 years down the road. Where I'm going with this is, in a couple of years, there's going to be at least 2 other companies out there who have the capacity to do garbage. When do they start? When does Circle take over?
Through the chair, it's our same vendor that submitted the only bid. So they're not called circular. Basically, the same vendor that submitted our bid tonight, GFL, has been awarded that recycling contract.
Getting our own garbage truck and driving up and down the roads, you know, I don't know. I know. Okay, any further questions, comments while we're waiting? So Counselor Garen?
Comment that Councilor McGuire Blaze made for the nickels you're saving on weekly versus biweekly and that level of service, which I know what I'm seeing up there, the 52% versus 48 or whatever, for weekly. I think it's more than that. I think a lot of people that I've spoke to don't want to change from weekly to biweekly. So I wouldn't be supporting the biweekly for sure. Unfortunately, we're left with one bid and running out of time. So that last contract, we were looking it up, Kate, but it wasn't, the 2015 was an 8-year contract, right? Okay, and I'm just kind of looking for like what that jump was from once we got to 2023 and even in a percentage.
The Deputy Mayor Shepley, then Counselor Hammond.
Mayor Bonnie, thank you. Just for council where, so tonight, right, we're having the recommendation to maintain weekly. We have every intention to do our due diligence as we get more information for organics and that to go out for more public consultation, right? Just in case, once we have a better feel how organics working, the garbage, because that could change. That's why it's important to at least have the option 6 months that we can switch if we have to, but it's something we know probably in a year or so we will have to do public consultation.
Okay, I have Deputy Mayor Shepley, then Counselor Hammond, then Counselor McGuire, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. So I was kind of in the same boat. I weekly, bi-weekly, I wasn't sure where to go. I mean, we've been hearing great things at USWA about how the bi-weekly will be perfect once we're in full swing in organics. And I've spoken to some residents in Toronto area and that, and friends of mine that they said, once you're used to it, and it does work bi-weekly, you do have a lot less trash, but I think I'm worried about maybe not having enough. We need to have a bit of an overlap of the two personally, I think, just to help residents see that would be the case when the time comes to switch to bi-weekly. I think initially we got to stay where we're at.
I would like to get an idea as to what we're paying per household for our total garbage collection, and that's with recycling included. We're getting these multiple bills here and the bill continuously adds up. I'd just like to know what roughly our household bill is for our total garbage collection.
$189 for 2023, and it's going to be proposed at $222 with the total increase. That's for everything.
Counselor McGuire Blaze.
Well, thank you through the chair. I'm wondering if you have the difference between if we were to go weekly at a 5-year term, what each resident would pay, to weekly at an 8-year term, what each resident would pay. Do we have that breakdown by chance? Okay.
I think a message for the public is there'll be no, like, we have to have garbage pickup. So we need to enter into a contract. But in terms of weekly or bi-weekly, there'll be no sudden moves on that. You know, I think if we ever were to move to bi-weekly, we would make sure that we're doing public consultation, make sure that organics is up and running. I really don't like the fact that homes that already compost will be charged for pickup. Like, I already compost, so I'm not crazy about it, but. Okay, we have a couple recommendations in the report. So we need a mover and a seconder that the corporate services report be received and that council award the request for proposal for municipal waste collection services to GFL for an 8-year period commencing May 2nd and ending May 1st, 2032, with an option to extend for 2 more years pending acceptable performance, and direct administration to return with appropriate bylaw for council consideration, approving the entering into an agreement for the provision of municipal waste service collection and that the estimated budget overage for the 8 months, May 1st to December 24th, be funded from the garbage levy, and that the garbage levy be adjusted from 0.00104 to 0.00116 in this fiscal budget to fund the budget deficit of 191,000 in 2024. Okay. Okay, that is the motion on the table. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Maney. Questions to that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of that? And that is carried unanimously. I'm sure we'll come back with some more information and some of those questions that we're getting. Like Councilor McGuire Blaze said, looking at, what is the actual difference for our residents coming, then we can take that to the public and get more information. Take lots of time with this. Motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councilor Hammond, all in favor. Thank you for joining us tonight.